Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian. It's great having you back with us. On the heels of a protest at the Sir Kendall G.L. Isaacs Gymnasium this weekend, where protesters of the Operation Sovereign Bahamas called on government to evict the occupants of the shelter, Acting Prime Minister Peter Turnquest says these shelters are essential to reintegrating people into communities and meeting the expectations of international communities in the treatment, housing, and long-term care of affected hurricane victims. He acknowledged that hurricane shelters were not created for a long-term stay. However, Mr. Turnquest says the occupants of the shelters are legal residents of the Bahamas and the government has a legal right to provide safety and shelter for the hurricane victims.
The Bahamas is a country of laws, and it is our duty to the Bahamian people to enforce the laws. And the Prime Minister has been very clear about this. It's not about persecution. It's not about any kind of prejudice or inhumane action. It is about enforcing the laws of the Bahamas. Anybody that is here legally, via an active work permit, permanent residency, or nationalization, has a right to all of the protection and benefit that the state affords its citizens and residents. If you don't fall in that category, then obviously we would expect you to do the honorable thing.
The DPM adds that the Bahamas government has protected the rights and dignity of everyone affected by the storm, adding that the Bahamas does not have the resources to accept everyone that comes to its borders. However, he cautioned Bahamians against demonstrating and discriminating against migrants and allow the government to do its job. He gave added assurance that the government will follow the immigration laws of the Bahamas. The cleanup process in the Pigeon P nearly 100% complete, with the mud at about 30%, and that's according to Relief and Reconstruction co-chair John Michael Clark, who told reporters today that the significant progress has been made in those areas. Having signed 8 additional debris removal contractors on the ground, Mr. Clark says headway is being made, but is that sufficient considering many Abaco residents are still being housed in shelters here in the capital? Well, Mr. Clark says they are engaging with local government directly.
And we've been asking them to assist us by giving us information straight at ground zero. Out of those discussions, we've made some changes to our approach. So we would have heard the Prime Minister say a few weeks ago that we're now going to, instead of having all the domes centrally located in a dome city area, we're going to move those into the communities. So decisions like that came from engagements on the ground with residents in Abaco. We've been trying to share information. We've been sharing information with local government and trying to get them more involved with helping us to do a better job, assess what needs to happen for the local resident.
Now, as for debris removal timeline, Mr. Clark says that the original timeline given estimated between 120 to 180 days.
The public spaces is not the problem. It's the private residences where the protocols are a little bit different. But that's why we did the additional 8 debris removal contractors last week, so that we can begin to focus on the residential areas and attend to those with a little bit more experience.
As for additional bodies found in the cleanup process, Mr. Clark says he was not in a position to say whether any were recovered. At last report, the official count of bodies recovered post-Hurricane Dorian was 67. 24 scientists and experts are opposing Disney's proposed $400 million cruise port and entertainment facility at Lighthouse Point. A letter from environmental groups opposing the development set out the technical case against Disney's development. The letter was initiated by Chair of the Board of Directors at the Fisheries Conservative Foundation, Dr. David Phillips, and joined by researchers and practitioners familiar with the environment and potential impacts of Disney's plan to build a 0.6-mile-long pier and on-the-shore facilities to handle up to 1 million visitors each year to the environmentally sensitive area. The letter states that in the wake of the devastation caused by Hurricane Dorian and in the face of rapidly changing climate, the protection of ecologically important places like Lighthouse Point and the surrounding waters is now even more important and indeed urgent. The letter warns that a construction project of this scale in a proposed protected area clearly contradicts Disney's commitments to ensuring a world where wildlife thrives and nature is treasured and protected. Additionally, the proposed pier would disrupt the movement of important marine species and possibly eliminate bonefish, grouper, and snapper migrants around Lighthouse Point to spawning sites on the Exuma Sound shoreline on the bone fishing industry. The letter was sent to Disney officials this past Friday and is still open to other scientists and researchers who share these concerns about the proposed cruise development at Lighthouse Point. Well, in a quick response, Walt Disney Company Vice President of Animals, Science and Environment, Dr. Mark Penning, pointed out that several of the opinions expressed in the letter are not based on fact, but rather on widely speculative and misinformed rhetoric being shared by those who oppose the project. According to Mr. Pennings, it is easy for people, many of whom have never been to South Eleuthera or engaged with the community, to dismiss a project that will create much-needed economic opportunities for residents. This, he says, not only includes the quality of jobs that will be created during the construction and operation, but also the purchasing of goods and services and the opportunity for Bahamian ownership that the project will create. As there is always a delicate balance between sustainable economic development and protecting the environment, Dr. Pennings says Disney has accomplished this with this plan. Dr. Penning reiterated that Disney only intends to move forward with a project at Lighthouse Point, Eleuthera, if they can do so in a manner that is aligned with the company's deep and long-standing commitment to the environment. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.